All right, for the second part of this session, leading Outloud, elevating youth to end violence. We have two presenters for this part. Um, I hope and pray I'm saying her name correct. Ms. Kiricka Yarbough-Smith. Kiricka, got you. She is the CEO, principal consultant of Yarbough-Smith Consulting, and also Ms. Kendra Underwood, the youth outreach coordinator at Mindset Kidz. So please welcome both of these brilliant young ladies to the stage, please.
You want to test it real quick? All right. Hello, everybody. Good morning. And so my name is Kiricka. Just think Eureka. Vacuum cleaner, put a K in front of it. All right? I think everybody should remember my name. And I'll let Ms. Kendra introduce herself. But as he mentioned, I am with Yarbough-Smith Consulting Group. And we'll talk a little bit about how the two kind of work together with our LEAD program. And Kendra, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kendra Underwood. I am the Youth Outreach Coordinator for Mindset Kidz. Glad to be here this morning.
Oh, no. See, me. Yeah. All right. Okay, we're trying to figure out mics because there's two of us, unlike in other presentations. So the first thing we want to talk a little bit about is just kind of what LEAD is. I think, as we're thinking about this program, I think we moved a few slides ahead. Yeah. So when we're talking about what our business does with KYS Consulting Group, I do a lot of different things. We help people with managing finances. So it's so important when what Stephen was talking about how do you diversify your funding. So one of the things that I do with a lot of nonprofits is help figure out ways to do fundraising, help write grants, help figure out ways to not just depend on government funds, but how do we, reach out into our community, get corporate organizations at the table, all of those things. And so one of the things that I've done with the program is try to help create some other opportunities and levels of funding for the program that, say, for instance, our youth are employed, but we can't pay for employment through our grants. So how do we do that? So we found ways to do that. And then also helping communities create ways to do outreach and provide services not only to youth, but to anyone who has experienced any sort of crime we usually work with, and then just helping build organizational capacity and doing training.
And so I serve again as the Youth Outreach Coordinator for Mindset Kidz. And at Mindset Kidz, it's just that we believe that your mindset is everything. And so our mission is to provide youth with the tools and skills needed to develop a healthy mindset to have a better quality of life. We provide a lot of services. Today we're going to talk about our youth services that we provide, but we do, just like Stephen spoke on, we do have family services to incorporate family into the work that we do. We do provide training and education, as well as community violence intervention services as well. And so before we kind of just tap into the work that we do, it's important for us to kind of understand some of the risk factors that increase youth violence. And so I won't go through this entire graphic, but I just will name a few. I think for me, being labeled the bad kid oftentimes carries or follows that student long into adulthood as well. Mental health problems and concerns, especially after COVID, we realize that is on the rise as well as before. Feelings of alienation, not being able to have a sense of belonging, as well as history of other types of abuse and trauma.
And so I'm going to take a little bit and talk about what LEAD is. So in order for us to kind of dive into what our LEAD program is, first I have to give you a little bit of history. So in 2019, right before COVID hit, we were working, and so Kendra and I actually both were at the Department of Administration. We were at the Council for Women and Youth Involvement office, and so I managed their human trafficking program there. And so one of the things that we were doing, we're going out into communities, providing training all across the state. We always said we were from Murphy to Manteo, right? Providing training on human trafficking, sexual violence, teen dating violence to anybody that will listen, mainly, focusing heavily on schools and working with departments of social services, anyone who was serving youth, because that was the funding source we had was focused on youth. And so one of the things that we discovered when we were out doing all these trainings is sometimes people would say to us, we would love to tackle human trafficking. We see it happening, but to be honest with you, we don't have basic resources for the kids in our community, and they're getting in trouble all the time, and until we can address that, we can't tackle this issue. So we said, how do we come up with a plan to help people tackle this issue? And we noticed the biggest issue was in our rural communities because they just didn't have the resources. So one of the trainings that we did and one of the communities that we work with constantly and we were always engaged with was a rural community in Person County, so Roxborough, North Carolina. We would be there a lot and talking to, whether it was law enforcement, the Department of Social Services, juvenile justice, all these different groups at the table. And one day we were outside talking after a meeting, and I see a line of kids all the way around the building. And I was like, why are all these kids standing outside? And they said, that's teen court. We have more kids in teen court than we do in the classroom. And so what we decided from that point on is how do we do something in this community that can help with helping getting kids out of, this cycle. And so we all worked together and created a team to start this LEAD program and wrote a grant. And then I'm going to let Kendra talk to you a little bit more about what that program is.
Yeah, so our LEAD program stands for Leading, Educating, Advising, and Developing Students into Future Leaders. We do a lot of things like academic support and tutoring. I feel like our mentorship opportunity is really our bread and butter with providing students with an opportunity to gain mentorship experience in their communities. We do provide mental health counseling and support for groups and families and individuals, and also community service projects and enrichment opportunities as well. And so we've expanded to include Person, Vance, Granville, Caswell counties as well to be able to support the youth in those communities.
And just to add, just because we are paired with Stephen, and Stephen does amazing work, I think the one thing that we would say that's a little bit different about our program is we were brought in to work with youth who had experienced violence, or they either had experienced violence or they were witnesses of violence. And then as we continued to work with those kids, we started working also with kids who were involved in the justice system. But what I would venture to say is there's no difference in the two, because what we did discover, of course, like you all know, is that a lot of the kids who were involved in the justice system were mainly ones who had had some sort of trauma history, who had already experienced witness violence or been a part of violence before they committed violence, right? And so until we tackle that underneath things, we realized that's kind of what we had to focus on with the program.
Thank you. Just a couple of goals for our program. Number one is to identify and address the gaps in resources, especially in rural communities. We know oftentimes we don't have YMCAs or after-school programs or just programming, period. So what are the resources that are needed in those communities? Number two, to provide trauma-informed, culturally specific services for our youth. Number three, to provide a safe space in which youth can come to have an opportunity to receive those services. And number four, just generally being able to provide wraparound services for youth in the communities.
And the way in which we try to do all of our work is we are very big on engaging and in developing youth, and we meet them where they are. And I think a lot of people say they include youth, and they're, making sure that youth are at the table. We don't just make sure youth are at the table, we make sure their voices are heard, right? We support them, we guide them, but they lead the work that we do. And so I think that's one of the things that we love about the model, because our kids are invested, and you'll get to see that because we're going to show you some of the things that they do. But, we start kind of at the bottom tier. We start at the bottom tier and kind of work our way up. The first thing we start with is looking at how do we expand opportunities and equity for the kids that we are serving. We know that especially in our rural communities, a lot of our kids are disconnected. They don't have the not only do they not have the opportunities to do things, there are so many things they've never even experienced or been a part of. So we try to find ways, so we connect them to employment, we work with them, they all get mentors within the community that they work with at local businesses, and as Letitia mentioned earlier, they get paid. They get a check, they get a stipend at the end of the summer, but they do have a tier system, and we'll talk a little bit about that. The next thing that we do is we look at, how do we help them heal, because we can't fully work with our youth and get them involved in employment and in our, educational services and the mental health and all the things that we do if we don't figure out what the trauma is and help them heal from it. So we spend a lot of time of trying to help them heal, but we try to meet them where they are, and we look at their identity and we honor their identity. So whoever they are, they get to tell us, and that's how we operate. And so it's very individualistic. There's no one size fits all model to us when we're working with kids. Each one of them we sit down with, we have conversations with, we have a good time with, we do all the things. I think the other piece is we try to build safe relationships and inclusive environments. I think that there are times that I would say Kendra has the best relationship with some of the kids, and then there's sometimes I do, or Mr. Derek, who runs the program. We might all have different relationships with different ones of the kids, or our, employment specialists might. But the key is we try to identify with them and understand where they're coming from, and we try to connect in ways, like some of them, I'm big on music. Like Stephen was playing music earlier. A lot of people, we know that music is universal, right? And so sitting down with them and letting them tell us what their favorite song is and why. When we have our workshops and our meetings, we get the kids to create a playlist. We tell them it has to be clean, but they create a playlist. What is it that you want to hear when we're taking breaks, when we're doing activities? They create the playlist, not us, right? So it's just little things that we try to do. And then finally, and we'll talk a little bit more about this one, but we're very big on figuring out ways that we actually center their voices and help them become leaders. Because it's one thing to help them heal and to get them involved in things, but how do we now teach them that they can also lead? Because I can tell you the kids that we work with, and I don't know if we mentioned this in the beginning, our kids are high school and middle school age youth. But most of them that we get have never led anything at school. They've never led anything in their community. So they don't feel like leaders, and they don't feel like it's something that they can do. But by the time they finish with us, we want everybody to understand that they have leadership capabilities, and everybody doesn't have to lead the same. I'm loud. I'm the one that's going to be talking. But you don't have to be loud to lead. So we teach everyone how to be a leader where they are. And so just talking through this one really quickly, you'll see in this photo, this is us with a few of our young ladies. They were helping me. So my business got a grant to, it's called the Challenge Grant through the Office of Women's Health. And we got this grant to do some prevention work on human trafficking in rural communities. And how do we help prevent and educate girls and women on trafficking? So what they decided that they wanted to do to help do this was to create a podcast. So they created a podcast called the Overlook Series, and we'll show you a little clip from their kind of start of that soon. But they created this podcast, so we sat around and talked. They came up with the questions. Now, we sat down and we first trained them on trafficking, so they had a series of trainings, and then they created the questions that they wanted to ask. We tailored the questions, and we worked with the videographer who came in, talked to them about film, about doing the whole process. And so when we're thinking about those opportunities, we really try to make sure that, one of the things the girls told us when we were talking about doing this, we said, why do you want to do this? And they said, because people are always talking to us and about us, but they never take the time to get to know us. We're sitting in rooms where we're always overlooked. We're not heard. Even when we're trying to tell people what we know, they don't listen to us. And this gives us a chance to tell people what we think and what we need. And so this is why we chose this path. And I think the biggest thing is we've just learned over, since 2019, the biggest thing is when we're supporting them and we walk alongside them, they really do thrive. Even if they have, missteps here and there, they know that they can come to us and say, I messed up. And we can kind of go back and figure out where do we go from here. And so a lot of that to us is once we're connecting them to not only the employment side, but to coaching. If they're struggling academically, they send us their report cards. But one of the things that we've taught them is that that is not something that we're holding against you. We're looking at your report card simply to see where you can use the help. And because we've shown them that we're not looking down on them or penalizing them because of that, they're happy to do that, right? And then we have a tutoring center that we now have that provides free tutoring to them. And so they get that resource, and so a lot of their grades and things are doing a lot better because of that. But I'll let you go to the next one.
On this slide, as y'all can see, we have a couple of our students at their placement sites. But again, it's just about supporting them through employment, right? And so we have a lot of mentors in the communities that are not paid. We do not pay our mentors at all to provide that mentorship experience to our students. And that should show you that they are invested in the program and that they are invested in the students that are in their community. And so they really spend a lot of time working with them, not just during the summer program or their intensive summer program throughout the summer, but throughout the year as well. And so we are happy to have them. Took a lot of relationship building, and we'll kind of speak to that as well, because that's what it is. It's about sitting down, having a conversation, and making sure that the goals align. Because let's just be honest, not everybody is going to go to college after they graduate high school, and that's okay. But it's about making sure that we have somebody in the community that the students can call on whenever they do graduate. Hey, can I come back and work for, a couple of weeks or months or whatever until I figure out what I want to do post high school. So it's just about making those connections so that the students have someone to rely on once they graduate high school. And also, too, I had a chance to speak to a couple of our mentors and found out that a lot of our students that are in the program that are now lead alumni are actually employees at that organization. So they learned the skills, they were able to, move on and actually gain employment at that site. And so we're very happy about that. But again, it's about building those partnerships, right? Oftentimes we like to sit behind a computer screen, sending an email or calling somebody or sending a text message. I can't tell you how many times I've actually been to these organizations, knocking on the doors or just wanting to meet with them just so we can have a conversation. How can we support you, support our youth in the community, right? We may meet, informally at a coffee shop. I'm not drinking coffee because I don't do that, but I'll play the game just so we can have that conversation, right? But again, it's just about building those relationships, partnering with schools, talking to superintendents to make sure that they have the resources to know that we are doing this type of work in the community. Again, building a consistency, not just meeting with them one time, but just following up, making sure that everything is still in line and that everything is good to go.
And one of the other ways that we do is because one of the grants that we do have is the Governor's Crime Commission CVIT, which is Community Violence Intervention Team grant. And with that grant, one of the things that we do is we also have developed a community violence team where we are working with partner organizations. But the wonderful thing for us before we ever even got that grant is because of the employment and the work that we're doing in the community, we already had a team. We weren't calling it community violence, and honestly, when we get together, we don't call it that now, because that's not what it's about. We have the agenda, and we talk about what we need to talk about, but we don't call it that when we walk into the room, because the people that came to the table came because they believed in the kids. They believed in trying to do the work to make sure that our communities, these communities could thrive and these kids could grow. And so we, when we said, oh, we're going to have a community violence team meeting, and we pulled people together, they're like, well, this is something, like, this is new. What are we doing? So we just said, oh, no, we're all going to keep meeting like we've been meeting, but we'll be talking about some new things. And they grabbed onto that a lot faster. So I think sometimes I always tell people, be careful. Sometimes we're so technical, and it's fine in the language that we put in the grant or the language that we're talking to each other because we have to have that language. Sometimes people in the community don't care anything about the language that we are using. They just want to do the work. And so we pull them to the table that way. And so we have law enforcement, we have juvenile justice at the table, we have our medical center, our behavioral health centers, Department of Social Services, housing, and I think I'm glad you said housing, because one of the things that I feel like people miss a lot is the opportunity to partner with some of the public housing authorities. Because when we were looking and trying to figure out some of the routes to go and what, the youth that we needed to really engage, they had them all, right? They had a whole list of kids that they wanted to get to us to enroll in this program. And it's because they actually were doing a lot of, work in the community, working with the families, trying to get computers to families that didn't have it, getting food and all of these things. And so us coming alongside them as a partnership to work with the kids was amazing. And so it really worked really well for us, especially with Roxborough Housing Authority. And then I mentioned that, with this layer, thinking about healing and identity, this is where we were doing our podcast, but what the kids wanted to do is they wanted to interview myself and Kendra to ask us a few questions about human trafficking. And so you see one of the youth interviewing us, but one of the things that I want you to see in a later slide is one of the young people in this program, was in the program, 4.5 years? About 4.5 years. Now she works part-time with us. And is in college. But one thing about her is that she was a person who had child abuse, a history of child abuse. She had issues in school. She had issues where, she was actually experiencing a trafficking situation. A lot of things were happening with this young lady. And the fact that now seeing how far she's moved along, and you'll see her later, and just seeing how, one of her biggest things was constant depression, anxiety, all these things, and you can see how happy some of these things are making them, and to just see the way that things have changed for her in 4.5 years, when we were really worried about her when we first got her. Yeah.
So we're just going to review a case with one of our youth. It reads, a youth referred by Roxborough Housing Authority, a member of our CVIT team, entered the LEAD program while involved in the juvenile justice system. Initially labeled, again, as we talked about earlier, troubled, he was quiet and withdrawn. Through consistent trauma-informed support and trust-building activities, he began to open up, engage with peers, and take initiative. I'll never forget whenever we had a conference, and this youth specifically, again, everybody is saying, watch your purse around this student, make sure you don't leave it there. While we were at this conference, the students had a dance, and just seeing him being involved, like in the dance, like just participating, wanting to be a child, wanting to be a youth and experiencing that, it was very good to see, versus someone just coming up to us telling us, watch your stuff, watch your bags. He wasn't worried about that. He just wanted to be in a room with his peers and to have fun, not to be thinking about trouble or being involved in getting in trouble. So it was just really good to see that.
And I just would add with that particular student, one thing that Stephen mentioned was talking about the trauma. And this is another example to me. What we noticed at that conference was he was kind of initially sitting off to the side because his probation officer had to come in order for him to come. And she was very good about making sure that she attended with him and all the things. And he was sitting there and he just kept sitting in a corner like he was sad. And his grandmother came as well. And so eventually she came out and talked to us. And one of the things that she told us is that he had been sitting there sad because he was waiting on his mom to call him. So his mom, he usually would get to talk to once every few months because she, had a substance use history, was in treatment, was supposed to be calling him. And what happened, she didn't call. And he had sat there and waited half the night for her to call. And so when we're thinking about some of the things he's doing, of course he's doing them, right? He doesn't have that support system.
Some of the workshops that we focus on, bullying and cyberbullying, digital safety and social media, especially these days. Oftentimes kids may not have anything to do after school, no after school programming, no youth programming, sports or anything. So they're going home, getting on these gaming systems and chatting with who we don't know. We don't know who they're talking to, right? And so just making sure that we train them on just the awareness of social media and how to be safe. Human trafficking, mental health awareness, teen dating violence, gun and gang violence, and so many other topics. But the main piece is that we ask them, what are y'all seeing? What do y'all want us to train you on, right? they're able and capable to be able to tell us exactly what they need and their strengths. And so we go directly to them. What is it that y'all want to see?
And we also have youth leaders who are usually coming up with the topics. They're putting together a lot of the workshops that we do, a lot of the materials, and they just work hand in hand with us. And so right now we have 4 youth advocates, 3 that have been with us for about 2 years now. Previously in the program, now working for the program. So we're really big on trying to do as much as we can to not only employ them during the summer, but find ways to connect them and keep them working with us as we move along. And I know we don't have that much time, so I'm gonna skip through. And with this one is another case, but one key thing about this young lady, she was 15 and with a foster family, and they were having a brand new baby and just had decided it was something that they felt like they couldn't do anymore. And so we got her in the program after she had been charged with shoplifting, and her probation officer again had come to us, and what we realized is the brother that we were just telling you about we had in the program previously, that was his sister. They had been separated since I think for about 5 years with their parents. Her dad was in jail and mom was on drugs. And so thinking about how these things play a part in who these kids are and what they're experiencing. I'll go to the next one. And so when we're talking about the next level of kind of fostering inclusivity, and as we're celebrating progress, a lot of the times what we do, and you remember me talking about the young lady and seeing how happy she is now, just being able to sit there and be a part of so many good things now. But one of the things that we typically do is we also do a leadership retreat. So not only for our youth leaders in the program, but every week we usually would pick a star student in the program, and so we usually select some of our star students who have really excelled, especially during the summer, with whether it's employment, attending the workshops, speaking out, doing all those things. We also take some of them. Not something we can pay for with grant funds, so that's another one of those things where we fundraise for.
And so we do have our lead youth resource center in Roxborough, where students are able to go to that center to receive the support, academic tutoring, training, and workshops. We just expanded to include a space titled The Garage, which I'm super excited about. It's a supervised, unstructured space where students can just go to be. The Learning Center or the Youth Resource Center is more structured, where they have different programming, but like I said, the Garage is just where they can go. Whenever we have a bad day and just need to separate or have somewhere to go, that's something for the youth to be able to do. How many of us need a day or a space to just be able to go somewhere, right? And so I'm happy that we were able to do that.
Can we watch that? We're going to try to play a video really quickly just to show you some of the things that they're doing. It looks like our time is getting limited, but do you know how to? She said I think somebody has to press the play button for us for the videos. Oh, yes, thank you. Thank you, Callie.
Jaden. The rumors are true. We're taking over the KYS social media pages.
And so just a little clip, one of the things that we did is we had all of our youth leaders take over our social media pages for the month of July. They created all the posts that we were going to post. Of course, we supervised, but they created all the posts, they created videos, they did so many things, and it was such a good turnout because they did it themselves. And so we got a lot of youth engagement because the youth led the project. And then, go to the next one. Okay, and then we were talking about the podcast that they're creating. And so they are still in the stages of getting those 4 episodes ready, but I want us to play this one real quick. Callie, can we play this one? Sorry. Just so you can kind of see what they're talking about. This is one of our youth leaders.
I think it's important for me to talk about human trafficking and the way that we're doing it because social media is mainly what people use nowadays. Like, everywhere you're looking, there's people on Snapchat, on Instagram, on TikTok, and that's kind of the main hotspot for things like this. And I feel like if we were to use social media, it'd be more effective than if we were to use any other way to talk about it.
Thank you. And go all the way to
I think it's...
And we also took our kids to the youth legislative assembly, so we had a few of our leaders who have never experienced anything like that, but they got to go work on bills and laws with legislators. And so we wanted to end by showing you this quick video of what the summer looks like for us. Thank y'all. I think we're done.
I know y'all can do better than that. Hold tight, ladies.
Yes.
At this time, we'd like to open the floor up for anyone that may have any questions for Ms. Kiricka and Ms. Kendra.
Right here. Looks like her hand went up first, right behind you.
I'm gonna have to get you your own personal mic over here.
Thank you. You ladies are absolutely amazing, and the phenomenal work that you do is very inspiring, so thank you for sharing that. I do have maybe 2 questions. Do you have a program where you have weekly engagement with your students in your house that you have? Is this like a place that they can come and sleep over at? And how did you go about securing your home?
All great questions. You want me to do it? Yeah. Okay. Help me though. So first part of that was, do we work with them weekly? So during the summer, we work with them weekly. I would venture to say it's daily. But when it comes to the school year, we don't do weekly. We do try to make sure that we're doing, as they're in school, we try to do check-ins. And so we will do that every other week. But if they need it, they can come to us. They can come to the center. It's a drop-in center. So they can come to the center at any time, during office hours, or they can email or text. So one thing we didn't mention is we have an app that the kids can communicate with each other and us in. And so if they need us at any point, they can message one of us and we can come be there. And I think your second question was about the center and how we kind of got that. So one of our mentors, and that's what we mean when we say the community is wrapped around this program and these kids. One of our mentors actually owned this house and let us use the house, and we pay like a small fee to rent the space at the house, and is even helping us with renovations to the outdoor workshop that's going to be the garage area that we're working on. So we had a mentor that literally donated the space. We pay a very minimal fee for that space every month. So that was a great question. So what's funny about that is originally no, but what our mentor has also done is now made the upstairs, which was a finished attic, but has now made that into an apartment that has 1, 2, 3 beds. So 2 rooms, 3 beds with a living area, all those things where we can. Now, if we have a young person, for instance, we have young people in our program who have kids. And so if, instead of going off to college, like one of them, she's been talking about wanting to go to the local community college after she graduates this year. So our thought is that something else that we want to be able to do is offer that sort of transitional, because she's not ready to be on her own, but she's able to kind of have that stage of going upstairs. So we do have it. If they need it, it's up there. So yes, great questions. Oh, right here. Will, I think we have right here. Getting some exercise.
All right. Hey, good afternoon. My name is Jermaine Thompson. Where are you from? Are you in Greensboro area or Raleigh? Where?
So we're
Roxborough? Or you said
Roxborough.
Roxborough?
So yes.
And where is that? Because I'm.
Person County, so it's on the other side of Durham. So
Okay.
we do Person, Caswell, Vance, and Granville, but our office and our center is in Person County.
Okay. I would love to reach out with you, so I want to make sure I connect with you. But
Absolutely.
two, because I was asked a question as soon as I got here on how to connect with the communities. I love what you said about the housing authority, because this summer I actually connected with the Greensboro Housing Authority, and I spent the summer with 2 communities
Right.
doing everything. We went on trips with the kids. We taught them how to cook. Financial literacy, everything. So I think that is a quick way to reach out to kids if people are wanting to know how to do that.
Right.
Also connect with those community presidents.
Absolutely.
You're right, they do have the list. They gave me all the students for the mentor program, everything, little kids and, men and women. So that is a resource that is actually helpful for everyone.
Absolutely.
So I just wanted to make sure that everyone did know that. So I appreciate that, and I would love to connect with you.
Absolutely, we'd love to. Right here, Will.
You all mentioned a very vital aspect of it. Your presentation was when you said that you help them heal. It sounds like it's a very individual approach, because you guys are like kind of spending time with them individually, and you have different connections with them. I go by this model: people don't know how much you care how much you know till they know how much you care.
Right.
And it seems like you guys are taking that approach as
Yes.
well. Have you thought about, and if you have, how do you scale that approach? Because I think that a lot more CBOs and the government agencies in here should all have that kind of approach within their strategies as well. So can you help us walk us through that a little bit?
Sure. You want to help me go? I'll start and then you, because I think one of the things that we do, that's a great question. We have some kids that we notice that right off, they need it the most. And so we start with those kids. I think the biggest thing that we've learned that's been sort of a lesson learned for us is that we can't reach every single one on that individual level week 1, but we take the summer and we break it down. So we start with kind of connecting with a few this week, and then we do a few this week and a few this week. But what really helps us is we have youth leaders. So they are staying in contact with the kids daily themselves. They have their band groups with their list of students, because each one of our kids has a list of students. They just have to keep us in the groups so that there's no communication that we don't see, just in case. But they're connecting. Sometimes our youth are the ones that tell us, hey, so-and-so had a really bad week at work, or, is having some issues at home. So then it helps us then start building those relationships. And to be honest with you, I don't know about you, but I think the biggest thing that the 3 of us talk about a lot is we were those kids. And so for me, it's easy to make that connection, because we were all 1 or 2 steps away without a mentor or somebody stepping in from being in the same situation as a lot of those kids. And so for me, it's literally one of us is taking this group of kids, we look at who has more in common or what's more likely for each one of the groups of kids, and we take those groups. And it's not just us, because we have several of our mentors who also step in, and we do background checks on our mentors. That's just another process that just depending on, we also want people with lived experience, so we are really cautious about how that works too, that process. But we make sure that no mentor is left alone with the kids, but we do have those conversations where it's not just us, it's them too.
I agree. I think the biggest piece, like Kiricka said, is our youth advocates, right? Just having those peer support leaders that the students are able to talk to and connect with, and then also bringing that back to us so that way we can move forward with what they need.
Right. Right. Yeah. Absolutely. So we do provide training to our mentors. So that's a big piece. Like Kendra, for instance, is trained on Love 146. It's a human trafficking training that really works with kids who have a history of human trafficking. I do the mental health first aid training. So we've also developed our own curricula. So we do have training that we provide to the mentors and the students, but we also train the parents. So that's a great question. We have to do it in stages because there's not as many of us, but we do try to reach everybody, hopefully by the end of the summer. Yeah. Great question.
All right, can I get everyone to give these young ladies a round of applause? Thank you so much.
Yeah.